Alrighty, there we go. Sound check. How is everyone doing? I've just got myself cleaned up a little bit and trying to set up my phone over here so I can see the chat that's going on if I get some chats tonight. I don't know. But yeah, I guess tonight I have a few topics that I'd like to talk about because one of them I've recently learned about, and the other one I've been wanting to talk about for a very long time. The problem has been that I have not been able to get my thoughts together enough to be able to say anything on the matter. Why is this not... there we are. So, I know that if anybody is on Twitter, then you might have noticed this debate that's been going on. I guess not so much of a debate as it is kind of an observation that's ruffling some feathers, and that is that men are not reading books anymore. They're not reading fiction or literature, and it's starting a bit of a kerfuffle. Apparently, some people are not happy with the fact that men want to be in the literary world, but they're kind of discriminated against. It's a very strange observation. So how did I first hear of this? So I first heard of this through John A. Douglas's video, and I hope he doesn't mind that I'm going to be playing some of his stuff, because he expresses himself a hell of a lot better than I express myself. So I skipped only the intro. That's what that 12 seconds is. But let's go ahead and listen to what he says.
Book 1, The Black Crown, available on Amazon in all formats, and it's that time again. We get this issue kicked off every now and then. Every couple of months it just seems to rear its ugly head, the issue of men and reading, and this time it seems I was the one that kicked the hornet's nest just a little bit for pointing out something that I happened to observe. I went into one of my local Targets, and believe me, we have a lot of those around here. Where I live, I'm within 30 minutes of 2 different Targets, 5 different Walmarts, and 3 different Books A Million Barnes and Nobles. And when I go in there, it's just my observation that when you look at what's on the shelf is not really for men. This is the video that I took a little earlier today, and just the observations that I had. Now,
I will say I may have had the same observations myself. A lot of the times when I go in there, outside of the children's section, which is like usually cute little children's books, when it comes to the adult section, it's a lot of like vague light fiction stories about like a romance or something like that. I never really see any like hard sci-fi or hard fantasy. Like I don't even remember in Target ever seeing Lord of the Rings. I don't know if it's the Targets around me, but I don't remember seeing anything like Lord of the Rings related or the Witcher series or anything like that. Stuff that men would typically go for. And Barnes & Noble it's slightly better in Barnes & Noble because you'll have your like history section, religion section, and all that. But even when you go into the little tables that are put in front of you when you walk into the store, a lot of it is self-help books, romantasy novels, or stuff that's basically porn for women. But the only bookstore I can think of where it's more of a balance in gender is Half Price Books, and that's a thrift bookstore. That's where you get all kinds of books, regardless of genre or anything like that. Though, around this time of the year, obviously, they're going to have all their Christmas crap out there, so I like Half Price Books. I think I enjoy Half Price Books better than Barnes & Noble, not just because of the pricing, but because you can find all sorts of stuff there. You can find stuff in Half Price Books that you cannot find
I didn't
in the store.
too much because I didn't want to get.
Sorry about that. My pinky accidentally hit the panel, but yeah, I prefer half-price books above all other bookstores. But let's get back to the video.
Caught by the Target employees, but this is just the observation I made in one aisle.
Here's a little informative video I wanted to kind of do. This kind of bleeds into a topic that was not all that far removed.
Yeah, it's stuff like this. I believe this one, Trial of the Sun Queen, I think that one's related to the Court of Roses novels, which, from what I understand, is basically erotica with some fantasy elements tied in there. Yeah, Before I Let Go, which is, I mean, there's nothing, now, before anybody puts any words in my mouth, there's nothing wrong with romantasy, like, on the face of it. There's nothing wrong with these books being available. There's nothing wrong with self-help books, because there are some people where their therapist is, like, helpful, but they could use some supplemental material, or maybe they just are going through a tough time, like grief, and they want to have some sort of, like, takeaway so they can move on with their life, and that's where self-help books are coming from. I remember reading How Not to Give a Fuck when I was in my early 20s, and it was helpful for me. So I'm not crapping on these genres that both me, Mr. Douglas, and a couple other people I'm going to mention. There's nothing wrong with those genres. It's just the fact that it is so everywhere, and it's kind of pushing out other genres that it could appeal to different demographics. That's where I'm going to be having a problem, because especially nowadays, when less people in general are reading books, you don't want to push away customers. So you should have, I believe that you should have a variety of books, regardless of gender demographics or gender targets that you want to get to, okay? If you are a publishing house, I feel like, unless you are like you have a specific mission statement, like you're a Christian publishing house or you're exclusively a children's publishing house, I feel like it's in your best interest to offer a variety of genres and targeting a variety of demographics, because you want that money. But for some reason, publishing houses, they really want to zero in on women. And I don't know if men stopped, like, collectively reading fiction before or something like that, but it's like all of a sudden the publishing house has decided, okay, we want women to be our targets. And then they get mad when men are not reading the books that they're putting out there, even though they are almost exclusively going after women. Let's continue.
So I just walked down the fantasy section of my local Target. You can kind of see here.
There's Dune.
What you see here is mostly romantasy. You go down a little bit, you see.
Okay, quick comment. I have heard that the Wicked book is different from the Wicked play and the Wicked musical and the movie. I heard it's actually a lot edgier. There's a couple of elements in there that are a little, which I don't have a problem with in principle.
There's a little bit of manga. Of course, there's Dune, because Dune's perpetually on the shelves. But when you ask the question why men don't read, what do you get when you come to just the general fantasy section of your average basic bitch bookstore? You know, you've got romantasy, of course. You know, Sarah J. Maas got her own whole section. There's the best.
The Fourth Wing. There. That's another erotica.
That time I got drunk and needed a love potion of werewolf. Yeah, it's definitely prime.
It sounds like something of a Japanese light novel, doesn't it?
You can just tell by most of these covers that most of these are romantasy-ish stories.
Sorry if the volume was too loud there.
That's a bit of a standout. Some Stephen King, because he's everywhere as well. But over here, got a few steps to the right here.
Yeah,
I'm
all of
actually
these
stepping
book covers are so like feminine. Like they're so basic, and either they're calming, or you want to know a book cover that would get a man's attention? There we are. There's a book cover that'll get a guy's attention. Elric of Melniboné. I need to read that series. I am a goldfish when it comes to reading, so sometimes it takes me a long ass while for me to actually get to the books I want to read. I have 4 different graphic novels that are sitting on top of my long box right now that I need to get to. I am so... Despite being a blogger and a reviewer, I am actually kind of terrible at keeping up with modern trends. I try. I do. I promise.
romance section they have, but you notice how it just kind of blends. The covers kind of blend into
They all look the same, too.
You wonder why men aren't reading more books. What's being put
Even
on shelves
Dune looks kind of
for them to
samey.
read?
And the reason I did this is because it's been at the back of my mind for a few months now, and we keep seeing an article every now and then pop up asking, well, why don't more men read? Why don't men read more books? You know, and my counter is always this, that there's nothing there for them. I'll tell you what I didn't film. That was just the fantasy section and part of the romance section. And you can see it was absolutely dominated by romantasy and otherwise women-driven fiction. But there was other sections there. There was a historical section that was mostly autobiographies.
Oh, that's a bugbear that I have had. Okay, it does make sense for autobiographies to be lumped in with historical books, because especially if it is a historical figure, then yeah, it makes sense for them to be there. However, am I going crazy, or has the history section been taken over by autobiography books and by biography books? It's like, I get why they're there, but when people go into the history section, they want to find books about the Roman Empire, the Viking Age, pirates. They want like a more generalized tome of stuff. They don't want to focus in on one person unless that one person is like super critical and important to major history, like a biography of Caesar, like that. People would do that. It just seems like random ass people are making their own autobiographies and they get lumped in with the history section. And I'm sitting here looking at these covers being like, who the hell are you? Anyway.
There was a young adult section, which was pretty much just more of the same. It looked exactly the same.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. I actually used to work at a bookstore some years ago, and I've noticed that the young adult section, that's meant for teenagers, so that's a big demographic. Teenagers, not boys teenagers or girl teenagers. Teenagers as a whole. And even back then, this was like 5 years ago, and it was pretty much all romantasy books. They were all like, oh, the heroine has to fight against an oppressive society, and she also has to pick between 2 boys to fuck. Twilight has seriously changed the publishing industry for the worst. Like, I read the first Twilight book, and it's not bad if you just take it as a supernatural romance, okay? A lot of people like to shit on it, but the first book, it's just a supernatural romance between a teenage girl and a vampire. The age gap is very iffy, but I will stand by that. It is an okay paranormal romance. The rest of the series is where things go off a cliff, but... Alright, we need to get back to the point.
Children's section, there was a BIPOC section, there was a non-fiction section. But notice there was nothing in those book sections for men. And when you go into like the Books A Millions or the Walmarts, it's pretty much the same thing. Where there are books, there's mostly women-driven fiction, written by women, edited for women, and published primarily to that demographic. The answer why is, well, it's not that hard to surmise. It's pretty much money. Right now, Bookstagram, BookTube are pretty big. That's also fairly high driven by a female demographic. So they're writing for each other, selling to each other, and reading to each other.
And one thing, I can't remember if he makes this point later on. I understand going after the money. So it's like, hey, there's these group of people who like this type of book and they're doing numbers on social media, so we need to make more of these books. But again, just because one demographic exists and they like a specific book, that doesn't mean you get rid of all other books for the other demographics. And it's really funny because the publishing houses, they see these interest in these romantasy books, and they're trying to be the PC people and blah, 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 blah. But then when men aren't reading the books, because let's be real, they're not written for them, they get pissy. They're like, why aren't you reading our books? We made these books. And it's like, well, you told us that those books aren't for us. Yeah, but you're still supposed to read them. It's such a childish way of looking at consuming art. The women, especially the woman in this opinion piece, I only skimmed through it, but some of the things I have already seen in it, it's like, oh my lord, honey. But it's like kindergarten logic. If you don't want to, don't come and play games with me. These games are just for me. And when everybody goes off and plays a different game, it's like, why isn't anybody playing with me? And it's like, because you told us that this game was only for you, and we want to play a game that's more for what more people want to do, or what a specific people want to do. Like, maybe some kids want to go play kickball, or they want to play tetherball or something like that. Maybe somebody would want to play the game that you would want to play. I'm sure that there are plenty of people who want to play the game that you want to play. But you can't expect everybody to play the same game. And the same goes for these books. It's like, look, if you want to read a book about a woman getting railed by a werewolf, it's like, okay, that's you. Have fun. And I'm sure there are some other people who would want to blog with you about the book, but you can't expect everyone to want to read that book. It's honestly just as insane. Imagine if they did that. Imagine if men flipped the script and said, hey, because I liked what is a good book that a lot of men like to read? I really liked Hellsing, and Hellsing's not made for everybody, but you gotta like Hellsing. And then when women look at Hellsing and they're like, well, this doesn't look like it's for us, well, we're not gonna read it. And the guy goes, oh, why aren't you liking what I like? You need to like what I like. Can you imagine if a guy pulled that? Like if the men pulled that? And for the record, while I have seen a lot of Hellsing fans who will sing praises for the series, I have never seen a single person say, hey, if you don't like Hellsing, you're fucking stupid, or how dare you not like Hellsing. If anything, it's the opposite, where most Hellsing fans are very aware that Hellsing is not made for everyone, and they do not blame anybody for saying, look, this is not for me. This is too crazy, too violent, and too edgy for me. And you know what? As someone who loves that series, I get it. And I'm pretty sure most Hellsing fans would agree with me in saying that we totally get it if you don't like that series. But it's not the same for these, like, romantasy books, where they're like, well, you're just a misogynistic bigot if you don't like this book. And it's like, no, it's just, I don't want to read a book about a woman getting railed by a werewolf. I'm sorry. All right, anyway.
And it's not like this hasn't always been the case. I mean, what I call the bodice ripper fantasies have always been a part of literature.
Oh my god, if one of these days I'm going to make a video about this topic, about the double standards of edgy content in female fiction versus edgy content in male fiction. You want to talk about a genre that has a lot of problematic elements in it. The bodice ripper genre and like romance and hardcore romance books, they would make de Sade blush. They would make the Marquis de Sade blush with how violent and how like sexually aggressive some of those can be. These are the same people who will throw a shit fit because a comic artist drew a female character in a bikini. And then they'll go home and they'll read one of these bodice ripper books and then flick the bean before going to bed at night. I don't know. And it's such hypocrisy. And then they also get mad when men don't want to read their bodice ripper books. And it's like, of course they don't want to read them. I mean, men like porn, but not the kind of porn you guys make.
And they've always sold like gangbusters. No shade on that. That's just a completely separate genre. It's just the mainstream trad pub industries sort of backed off from presenting male kind of driven fiction and putting it up front. I put this observation on my social media Twitter account, and my goodness, it really kicked off. I mean, I posted it while I was in the store, then drove home 30 minutes later and saw how it had just kind of started popping off, and will probably continue to pop off for a day or two after the posting of it. But
you're wrong. It's been popping off for... When was this video published? It's been popping off for almost a month now. Woohoo!
The point that I want to make, and I'll address a few points that were brought up in the replies to this. One being that, well, there are male-driven fiction that's out there, and there's male authors that are writing primarily for a male audience, and that is true. Guys like Larry Correa, Blaine Pardoe, Brad Thors, even in the indie spaces, I notice especially that's where a lot of male authors and male...
By the way, many men in the audience... He's basically the male equivalent to Book Talk. And he's going to list off a couple of, I think it's either this video or another video. He's going to list off a litany of other guys who are basically doing their own version of Book Talk on YouTube, where they talk about books that you as men would like to read.
Readers have kind of gone to. That's not the problem. That's not the point that I was making with the video. The point that I was making with the video is that there is kind of a discrepancy in the shelf space being presented. The industry has more or less abandoned male readership, and people pointing out that
it's kind of a combination of they abandoned male readership, but I think it's also because they think to themselves, oh, look, there's all these books written by men for men. We got all these books from the past. They got thousands of years of books written by men for men. So now it's the women's turn. And then they completely abandon the guys, thinking, oh, they'll just read all the older stuff. They don't need any more books. And now it's time for the women to make up for lost time. And then again, they turn around and be like, why aren't men buying our books? It's like, because you stop writing for them.
Well, men do read, and there are books for men, and there are authors writing for a male audience. That's true, but they're not on the shelf, and they're not being given the same kind of spotlight that the female-driven literature is, and that's the problem that I have. Men aren't reading as much, probably because they're not being given something to read. They're not being shown that what's popular these days is something that's for them. A lot of the bookish community might remember when YouTuber Razorfist kind of kicked off this particular discussion in it, and a lot of people derided him
Legends
for
and
this
lattes.
take. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair to him, because he's a guy. He likes guy-driven fiction. He likes he likes the kind.
Not only does he like guy-driven fiction, he's very much into like the rough and tumble kind of books. But yeah, it's like I kind of want to I kind of want to read Lattes and Legends because that looks like such a cringe book, and I want to read it to see how cringe it is. Because it looks like a lesbian romance between two orcs, which again, if you want to read a lesbian romance between two orcs, that's fine. You just gotta understand it's not for everyone, and not everyone wants to read it.
Kind of fiction that he likes, and if he walks into the bookstore and the first thing he sees is romantasy and cozy fiction that is not primarily in his reading wheelhouse, he might put that thought up there, but it's certainly not going to be a thought that's exclusive to him. And rather than deriding him for that particular take, you might start to think, well, if he's thinking that, who else is thinking that? And if he's thinking that, a lot of other guys probably are. And a lot of them are probably not going to be picking up Legends and Lattes and Reading. They might not have.
Or a lot of guys don't even know that there is new fiction coming out. They probably don't know what is available out there for them because the industry is so focused on diversifying their writers and trying to forcibly diversify their audience. And so this has been going on for 15 years? So that's 15 years of the industry gunning for this specific demographic. A lot of guys probably already gave up, and they probably don't even know that there are books out there for them. Kind of a funny story. This is going to make me sound like a controlling girlfriend. I really hope it doesn't. But earlier this summer, I've told this before, we had a comic book convention over in Dayton, which is about an hour away from where I am. And I turn to my boyfriend and I say, "Hey babe, do you want to come?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And I'm like, "Hey, by the way, you know that Conan movie you really like with Arnold Schwarzenegger? There's a lot of Conan comics there. And what do you know? We go to the convention and there is a shit ton of Conan comic content there." And he has told me that he was aware of the Conan comics, but he wasn't aware of how many there were. He thought maybe there was a 35-issue series or something like that. He didn't know the rabbit hole. He didn't even know the extent of all the different kind of comic book genres that were out there. And every time we passed by one of the booths that had the Alien series, the Alien comic book series, he's like, "Aliens!" It was kind of cute. But I think it might be the same for regular book industry, where there are probably some guys that's yeah, they know about the older stuff, but they probably don't even know that there is new stuff for them because they've been pushed out. And it's really sad because, I mean, like Mr. Douglas said, there are male authors out there who are trying to give them content for them to read, fiction stories that men would want to read. And because guys have been so expectant to not get catered to, that they've given up on the industry, now the male authors are not being spotlighted as much because the industry goes, "Oh, well, nobody's interested in your book anyway, so we're just going to keep promoting Lattes and Legends." It's a very vicious cycle, and it's so sad because, look, I want men to read, okay? I think that they should probably have a good, healthy hobby, and reading a book is a good, healthy thing to do. It exercises your brain. It can increase your vocabulary. It can contribute to some imagination, and it's just a good way to pass the time. I think reading is a good thing for everyone, and I find it sad that men feel like that they don't have a space to read, to get books anymore unless they have to go back to the older stuff. Which I believe it's this video, he does touch on that a little bit, but it's sad. And I don't understand this whole thing about, oh, well, men had the spotlight for so long, now it's women's turn, and we don't care if men are sad about it. And it's like, I think you should care if half of your population is unhappy with something, okay? Even if it's like, oh, it's just 50%, it's not like 75%. I think, I don't know, hot take, if 50% of your population is unhappy about something, maybe you should look into that, okay? Maybe you should see what's going on and see if you can fix it. Sorry, I'm reading a chat. Not the current big YA fan or some celebrity biographies. Yeah. My dad has made that mention to me before when I was starting my own writing career, because I have my blog and I do okay numbers. Apparently I do really well as far as medium standards go. But yeah. And I think a lot of that is not so much the publishing industry, but thank you for commenting, Mike, but I think a lot of nobody being interested in books in general, I think a lot of that has to do with entertainment being more about visuals and about short attention span stuff. And look, I am very much guilty of that myself. You know, the Instagram reels, the TikToks, or even just like a 20-minute YouTube video that's kind of replaced reading. And some people aren't even interested in movies anymore, which is that's really bad. All right, anyway.
Diverse reading palette like a lot of us do. I know I do. And this is not a shade on female authors in any way, because I enjoy several of them. R.H. Snow, Sarah Douglas, Margaret Weiss. The list goes on. I could go on for days about the wonderful female authors that I've read who have written fantastic books I've enjoyed. How big of an issue this is depends on your point of view. Some men find it an absolute travesty that they're not being given more new stuff. This sends a lot of men kind of scattered into the winds trying to find literature that appeals to them, that's being done in the same way. It's not being produced and presented in the same way that the female-driven literature is. That's the point.
Yeah, but I think another big factor is society has trended more towards being more diplomatic and being more like conflict resolution and being softer. And a lot of fantasy that appeals to men, it's about conflict. It's about battling. It's about fixing fate. It's about forging your own way. And it is aggressive in its way, but that's considered problematic now just because it's like, well, you punched a dragon. That hurts the dragon's feelings. Yeah, the dragon tried to burn the entire village down, but you punched him. And it's like, my God, you are such a pussy.
The indie spaces definitely are chock full of great male authors with writing wonderful books. And I've got whole shelves here behind me filled with male authors. But a lot of but imagine if you had a whole table full of stuff like this book that I'm reading now, Sledge versus the Labyrinth by Nick Horvath. This book is 100% testosterone. It's bone-crushing action. It's a fantastic book, and this is something that is much more interest to a male reader than, say, a Sarah J. Maas book. And that's not a shade on Sarah J. Maas, but what is a guy more likely to read? A Court of Thorn and Roses, or a guy fucking people up with a fucking sledgehammer?
I'm saying this as a writer myself. So most of what I write are my blog posts, obviously. I have a short story book, and I also write a lot of free verse poetry. And obviously my free verse poetry, it's going to appeal more to women, but I have talked to a couple of the guys who have read my poetry, and I've noticed that the poems that the men like, they're a little bit more on the aggressive side, or they're dealing with negative emotions in a more aggressive way, whereas the women are a lot more of that feel-good poetry. I would say that masculine macho media has taken off in the last year or two with the TV. I gotta tell you, Mike, I do not watch a lot of TV anymore because I don't have Netflix or cable. I mostly stick to YouTube now. I read comic books. I'm more of a... I despite what I said about being a goldfish and not keeping up with that, I am more of a reader than I am of a watcher. And some of that is because back when I was watching TV as a teenager, I got stuck on those shows where either it was episodic, like Bones or Criminal Minds. Yes, I was one of those weird kids. Or it was one of those season-long shows where it just kept going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, with no end in sight, no resolution, no big mysteries being solved, and it was just so annoying. The episodic shows I was more okay with, because it's like, all right, we're actually getting some progress here with the characters and stuff's being done. But I have been burned by one too many shows where it's just shit writing. I don't know. I will take your word for it. I have heard that Penguin is really, really good. And I was actually talking about my mom the other night about the Penguin, and hardly anyone in my family talks about comic book stuff. And my mom was like, "Hey Heather, do you know about the comic character the Penguin? Did you know he has a TV show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I heard it was really good. It's basically The Sopranos, but the Penguin." And honestly, out of all of the Batman characters that you could pull off The Sopranos, the Penguin probably would have been your best shot, because he is supposed to be one of those old school gangster types. And apparently he has a brace, and she asked me, "Hey, was there anything about the Penguin having polio?" And I'm like, "No." And you know what? Let's answer that question. Did the Penguin have polio? Because I know that the Penguin was supposed to have like a club foot, and he was always supposed to be deformed in walking. But I don't recall polio being in his origin story. All right, in the DCU, yeah, okay. Well, he's supposed to have like a waddle. I know he doesn't have a club foot or a limp. I don't know. I recall him supposed to have a waddle. That's kind of part of the reason why he's called the Penguin, outside of his appearance, is he kind of moves a little funny. And he does kind of waddle a little bit like a penguin. But we're getting off topic here. I don't know. I might watch the Penguin series, because I've just been hearing from all sides, "Oh my god, the series is really good, you need to see it." It's very weird to see normal people being like, "Oh my god, this comic book series is amazing," and it's like, oh, this is weird. And I don't remember the Penguin being all that popular as a character, but he's starring in this new series and everybody loves it. But I'm not complaining. I just find it very weird. I'm happy. I am happy that the Penguin is doing well. Don't anybody think that I'm disappointed or anything like that. I am happy it is doing well. I am just a little baffled. I am a little bamboozled right now.
I mean, what do you think? There's a reason that the 80s were so full of movies that were doing so well, that were loaded with guys with, huge muscles, one-man armies, basically killing the population of a small country. It's understandable that Trad Pub is going to go in the direction of where the money is coming from, and right now it's very much a female-driven industry, but there was never any reason for them to cast off the male readers. Male readers have been reading for a long time, and they're still helping make a lot of other authors very...
I think another aspect, I'm theorizing as I go. I don't have a fully formed thesis of why men aren't reading fiction anymore. I'm just kind of theorizing as I go here. But I think another reason why men are not reading as much fiction and anything, because notice men do read articles, men do read social media, men do read instructional stuff like that. But I feel like the male focus nowadays is reading to find a solution to the problems that are happening around them, and them trying to figure out how to solve society today. Because as fun as fiction can be, men, I'm getting into gender stereotypes here, men like solving stuff. And when the stuff is mostly solved and they've done all they can to solve the stuff, then they will turn to fictional stories where they can watch fictional characters solve stuff. Like, Conan fighting the giant serpent thing. There's a giant serpent that needs to get killed, and men like to read Conan going and figuring out how to slay the monster. Lord of the Rings. The party has to take the ring and throw it into the volcano. There is a problem that needs to be solved, and men like to read how the main characters are going to solve the problem. However, the social climate today is very anxiety-inducing, and I feel like with men, when they get anxious, they don't want to focus on fictional stories anymore. They want to find solution, and they want to do stuff to fix the problem. I don't know. It's very Freudian, and please call me out if I am getting this wrong, but I have noticed that men are more going towards fictional books that'll help them solve stuff rather than fictional stories. I might be wrong, and I am totally okay with you calling me out, but that's another theory of mine.
Prominent and successful, Brandon Sanderson being one of them. A lot of other male authors are benefiting from this, but and even some male readers are telling me in the comments, they just go backwards in time and just read the older stuff. And the older stuff is great. The old school pulps are great, but what's going through into the future? Going into the future, is there going to be the same kind of market that can actually offer men something to read? And to me, the indies is providing that, but the problem is at the moment, when you walk into the bookstore, that's not what you're going to find. That's not what's being presented, and that's not where Trad Pub is putting their money. I think it's something that should change, but ultimately, them casting off the male readership, not picking up the money that would come from, marketing to a male readership, that's money that's a loss for them, and for me, it's a win for me, because as a male author, and I write primarily with male sensibilities, that's
another thing that these publishers have not figured out. If you don't provide the product, customers are going to go somewhere else to find the product.
Pretty much who my books are going to be a little more appealing to. A lot of male authors write in that manner. Whether you're going for the universal appeal or a male-dominated appeal, either way, you're going to have the readership that ends up finding you. But I don't think it should be such a hard battle. I don't think it should be something that the Trad Pub industry casts off the way that it does. It's something that's going to continue as long as the money is there, and If they want the money that comes from Book Talk Slop, that's on them, not me. And I'll be here with my money looking for good books written by men and women who want my money and want my readership, and I'm more than happy to reciprocate that, because I've left a lot of industries and IPs that I enjoyed behind and gone almost fully indie these days.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a very positive message for indie authors. I have my opinions of where the indie sphere is going to be going. I feel like we're going to be heading back to an age of corporatism, probably in the next 10 years, I want to say. Just because it's the natural cycle. The current industry gets broken, people go and form their own thing, and then eventually, once that industry dies out or peters off into the distance, then the indies will come up with their own industries, and the cycle will repeat once again. But yeah, it's like, look, hey, if you guys are not going to provide this product, I will make my own product. I will build my own audience, and we're just going to make cool stuff together. That's what happened to comic books, kind of. And that kind of, we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's going down a weird direction.
Because the indies is where all the heart is, and to me, it's a much better industry. Granted, it's much more decentralized than the trad publishing apparatus is, but at the same time, I'm able to cultivate books that I enjoy, that appeal to me, and finding new and interesting people. And if I want to read romantasy, I'll go wander into Book Talk and see what they think. But off the cuff, at first glance, those aren't going to be the books that appeal to me as a guy. And they never have been. What does appeal to me has always been really awesome looking covers, action adventure looking, political intrigue of epic fantasy and science fiction and western. You know, these are the genres that I love reading. These are the genres that I go searching for good titles in, and I know that I'm not alone. And I would just hope that the industry would do a return to form, and at the very least give kind of at least a pittance to male readers, to give them something. Even when you go into a big box bookstore, the epic fantasy section is very narrow, but it is loaded down with a lot of really good male authors that are meant for more of a male readership, and that's what I do enjoy that. But when you turn your head around and you look, the young adult section, the romantasy section, it's all you can see where all the money and focus is being put in the industry. But that's what I think. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a like and a comment.
But yeah, it is kind of a sad state for the books that are available in the big bookstores. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So one thing that I am going to say this for Mr. Douglas, and I'm going to say that for the next video I have for us by this Echo Chamberlain guy, is people are going to say that these two guys want to return to men dominating the industry and men taking over everything and women being pushed into the side. That is not true. You heard the man himself. He wants to go back to, can you just give us like a little bit of stuff? Can you give us like some stuff for men? And he never, and he didn't say we need to stop making romantasy or stop making romance books. But can we please even it out a little bit? Have a little something for everyone? It is okay to write for both men and women. It's okay to have two different kinds of books for both demographics. You don't have to pick one or the other, or what the industry is trying to do now, smush genres and demographics together in this freakish Frankenstein monster book that nobody wants to read. Just expand the horizons a little bit. Have some variety. It won't kill you. And hey, you might gain some more readers that are like willing to cross read from the genres. I don't know. Okay, so that's all for Mr. Douglas's video. Now let's go into Echo Chamberlain's video, and this one was one that I discovered right after the No Books for Men video, talking about how the publishing industry has been dominated by women, and that's part of the reason why there are no books for men anymore. So let's get into this.
The gender disparity in fiction is bordering on farcical. 83% of marketing, 92% of publicity, and 78% of editorial staff in Britain's publishing industry are female. About 3/4 of new titles in fiction are by female.
That is crazy, that the publishing industry has become that dominated by women. And I'm not one of those people who is saying that, oh, if women enter the workforce, it's going to immediately crumble. But I am going to say that it is a bit of a problem for an entertainment industry to be completely dominated, especially by activist types, dominated by one genre or the other. I feel like that, I do feel like that it should be more of a mixed diversity within the entertainment series, having different like viewpoints so we can have a more variety of entertainment. Because, look, men, I love you, but sometimes you seriously drop the ball when it comes to either writing women, writing female behavior, writing female characters. Sometimes you really suck at that. And I do not think you guys should be in charge of the bodice ripper genre or romance genre. And if you're clutching your pearls at me saying that, let me direct you to a nice little subreddit called r/men writing women. Yeah, if you think, yeah. Come on. All right, so if you think that what I am saying is a little outlandish, take a little gallop in this subreddit, because you guys can be quite clueless when it comes to women sometimes. It must be hard for a man to express his feelings, hang no bosoms to rise and fall from with emotion. This is 100% call-out post about male authors. I don't think men can't be emotional. It's just sometimes, let's just say you guys have a very interesting way of expressing yourselves.
Male authors. A poll of the American publishing industry found 77% of publishing staff were female, including 6 in 10.
Oh, and by the way, just in case somebody misunderstands, when I say that it should be diversified, I'm not talking about DEI. What I mean is having a vast diversity of people with merit in entertainment. No, I am not about DEI. I'm just saying that when it comes to entertainment as a whole, I'm not talking about a specific genre. I'm saying entertainment as a whole. I think it should be more diverse, because you want to appeal to different demographics. One gender is better than the other. Men are a little bit better making war movies. Women are better at making romance movies. It is what it is. So that's what I meant when I said that I feel like there should be a diversity in entertainment. However, as you saw by the graphs, the scale has tipped. There is less diversity in the publishing industry, and it is skewed more towards women, which is a problem. I feel like there should be more men involved in the publishing industry, especially if we want to make more entertainment and more books for men. Anyway.
At executive or board level. When the Women's Prize for Fiction was launched in 1996, it was badly needed. Back then, female writers found it hard to get their work published. To illustrate how farcical the current literary landscape has become, the circumstances at commercial and award level are now worse for men than they were for women when they felt compelled to bandy together to launch a women's-only literary prize out of frustration at being marginalized. When the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Elizabeth Strout criticized women's domination of the fiction market, she found herself on the receiving end of a social media pile-on. She was advancing a notion that few people in the world of publishing are willing.
And on one hand, I understand where people are coming from when they're freaking out about how, hey, we need more men in this industry. Why are there so many women in here? I can understand the initial knee-jerk freak out because like you said, for the longest time, the industry had been completely dominated by men and made it hard for women to get published, which was a problem. However, we have the roles have been reversed. And it is also a problem, and it is okay to call it out for what it is.
Willing to do. Most fiction editors, those who have the power to buy up manuscripts, are middle-class, white, left-leaning women.
Interesting image to go along with that.
This new breed of publishers and agents, with their similar cultural tastes and political perspectives, are increasingly commissioning works from authors similar to themselves. In Britain, there are no recognizable heirs to the likes of Martin Amis, Julian Barnes, Ian McEwan, and Salman Rushdie. The same is true in the US, where long gone are the likes of Saul Bellow, Philip Roth, and John Updike. Booker Prize winner John Banville recently criticized this current suspicion about white straight men, and added, "I would not like to be starting out now, certainly. It's very difficult." Nowhere, when...
For a very long time, I thought I would have an easier... It would be easier for me to publish under a male name, to have a male pen name. And I keep being told, no, don't do that. You would actually be considered more valuable as a woman. Like, people would be more drawn to your stuff because you're a woman. You'll have an easier time as a woman. And I do get that point, especially when you come into the demographics he's talking about there, where the industry is so populated by women that they don't really want to let men in anymore. So I do get that point. But I also, it's like, I don't know. I have this fear that if I do want to publish something that's more gender neutral, or even publish something that does appeal to men, that I might have an easier time gaining the reader's trust as a male, writing as a male, taking on a male name, because there's so much distrust against female authors now and female writers, especially with the recent flops of mainstream media that were heavily feminized. I feel like men would not trust an action book written by a woman. And I don't blame them. It sucks, but I don't blame them.
Whenever an article is written about the almost farcical lurch in the other direction, does any commentator even think to wonder if the prior disproportionality, always considered a shortcoming of publishing, could be even a mild issue replicated the other way? Wherever there are graphs showing demographic breakdowns of the industry, commentators will roundly criticize the lack of representation of minorities, but say nothing about the astoundingly out-of-whack gender disparity, which is staring them right in the face. There is a slightly priggish blind spot. The latest Booker Prize shortlist includes just one man. Over the past 5 years, the Observer's annual debut...
Yeah, that'll help with the male loneliness problem and male self-esteem problem. Tell them blatantly that we don't want your shit and make it clear that their stuff isn't wanted. That's gonna encourage them to want to read more books or maybe participate a little bit more in the publishing industry, shutting them the fuck out.
Novelist feature has showcased 44 writers, 33 of whom were female. Either male authors have gotten worse, or white female authors have gotten better, or were always better all along, or white middle-class left-leaning women have become disproportionately represented in publishing and promote white middle-class left-leaning women, writing stories featuring white middle-class left-leaning women to be read by white middle-class left-leaning women. And for the record, being more ubiquitous doesn't mean inherently better. Think of this in the wider term.
Exactly. Just because you're making things more feminine, that doesn't mean better. Just because you're doing it more of the historically underrepresented group, that doesn't mean better. Because quite frankly, while there are some good female writers, there are also a lot of female writers out there who are complete dog shit at their jobs. And you read their books and you wonder, how in the hell did you get published? Like I mentioned, sorry, pulling your boy Zach there. Like I mentioned Twilight before, and I will still say that it is an okay paranormal romance. But then you get to things like 50 Shades of Grey. I've only read like snippets of it, but the snippets I have read of it, it's like, what in the hell? Who looked at this and said, this needs to be published? This needs to be in every home in America. Like, who thought this was a good idea? And they just keep recruiting all these women because, oh, a woman, therefore it is automatically better. Oh, a woman, her opinion is valuable. Look, not every woman's opinion is good, okay? Not every woman's thoughts are well constructed, okay? I don't know. I get very annoyed by that. I will still stand by that there are some very intelligent women out there who deserve to be spotlighted or deserved the acclaim that they have. The classic example is Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. She deserves to be celebrated. She's basically the godmother of science fiction and modern horror. But then you get people like E.L. James, and it's like, no, why the hell are you being celebrated? Not only are you not a great writer, you're also a plagiarist. And the Twilight authors sort of sued your ass. Because, yeah, 50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fan fiction that got reworked into being an erotica novel.
In terms of cultural footprint, how many contemporary authors can you think of who are household names and whose works have caused a sensation? How many
The only one I can think of is the writer for Milk and Honey. I read that poetry book before, and it didn't meet my expectation.
contemporary authors are in the cultural zeitgeist, discussed socially, not in the world of literary festivals and online literary magazines, but in the collective imagination. How many contemporary authors can you think of that hip undergraduates have as paperbacks in their backpacks on college campuses?
It's all Catcher in the Rye. It's a Catcher in the Rye, maybe the latest self-help book or something like that. No, I can't name any of them either.
Contemporary authors can you remember having enough of a public profile and being compelling enough to be on late-night talk shows? You would have to be deeply emotionally immature or harboring some kind of morbidities and bitterness if you for a second took the attitude that this ludicrous gender imbalance was somehow deserved after such an age of the imbalance going the other way. That it was a kind of fitting restitution, and that this would be good for literature and for
Yeah, it's that kindergarten logic again. You had this toy for so long. Now I want to play with it. Hey, you've had it for a little bit. Can I play with a toy? No, you've had it for too long. Now it's my turn to play with a toy whenever I want. It's so childish. It's such a childish way to look at making entertainment. Like, just make good shit. That's all you need to do. Just make good shit.
culture. You'd also have to be emotionally immature to have such a blind spot to think that male writers have traditionally had proclivities, tics, limitations, omissions in their writing, and yet women, rising into prominence, wouldn't have opposite but equivalent omissions, tics, and proclivities.
That's a subreddit we need. Women writing men. r/women writing men. Mine, like, we all know how cringy men can be writing women sometimes. That's why that subreddit exists in the first place. But I want to see the opposite. I want to see r/women writing men, because again, those bodice rippers, some of those women have some very interesting ideas about how the penis is supposed to work. You read some of it, it's like, have you even seen a dick before? Like, do you even know how a penis functions? Anyway.
Proclivities that might not be all that agreeable or relatable to vast swaths of men. Well, it's time for a bit of overdue honesty, which is to say, whilst the majority of published authors have got there through talent, insight, empathy, and honed technical craft, quite often, reading a disproportionate amount of fiction written by women, you'll have, from a guy's perspective, a disproportionate amount of sensuality, of sentimentality, of bright convivial humor that doesn't quite translate and isn't quite universal. If you admit or allow for the idea that there are traits in men's fiction that you've always felt a little off, a little cursory, lacking in abstraction or even lived experience, then it's not asking too much to acknowledge that the opposite can also be true. And if the current market of fiction is disproportionate...
Yeah, men have their blind spots and women have their blind spots. What I want to know is, what do these women think they will gain? Let's say men do finally start reading all of these hyper-feminine romantasy novels, or they start actually reading all of the women's novels, and they've read all the stuff, and now they are properly acquainted with the feminine mind. So, what then? Like, what do they think they will gain? Like, yippee, he read your book. Now what? What, like, is it really? Is that short-term read my book really worth dividing? I don't know. It's like, I don't even get trying to browbeat men into reading this hyper-feminine shit in the first place. I don't understand why so many of these female authors in the industry, they want men to read this stuff, even though they acknowledge fully that this stuff isn't made for men. What is there to gain? What, are they afraid that if they don't read these books, they're not going to understand the female mind and they'll turn into incels? Like, look, I know sometimes men can be emotionally constipated, but they can, like, understand and empathize with women without having to read hours upon hours upon hours of hyper-feminine fiction. Like, they don't need to do that to empathize with women and to not be misogynists. So, it's what is there to gain here? Anyway.
Proportionately awash at a 4-to-1 ratio, then not only are there limited options for men who might be inclined to go into a bookstore and check out the latest fiction, but it also can have a cause and effect of dissuading men and boys from thinking that the publishing industry and literature is for them, creating a negative cycle. If you have an emerging echo chamber of cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women in a social milieu of cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women interested in themes and content and signable new authors who are cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women, for a literary marketplace of cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women, and you have produced a manuscript with masculine characterization and themes, you might be dissuaded from too much emphasis of these things because the person receiving it in their email might consign it to the slush pile. And
one more thing. He does make that point of a lot of it has to do with cosmopolitan, liberally-leaning white women. And here's the thing. Not even all women like that perspective. Let that sink in. There are, like, say, rural women who live out like in the middle of Kansas or something like that. Not many of them actually enjoy the types of books that cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women would write or publish. I mean, think of Hallmark movies. There are a lot of women who like Hallmark movies, and they are the furthest thing from Cosmopolitan. And that's because the Cosmopolitan type of women, they do have a certain way of reading, and even that doesn't strike all female readers the same way. I don't know if it's because I'm a tomboy or because I'm a working class gal, but I can't relate to the Cosmopolitan socialites. I can't. Sex and the City does not appeal to me because I can't relate to those women at all. Or just office work and, getting coffee with the girlies, going to get mimosas, getting my nails done. Or, the high drama, having to choose between the cute barista and the super successful and sexy lawyer. I can't even relate to it. I don't even want that fantasy. And you want to know what those women are going to say to women like me who don't exactly like their vision of how books should be written too? They'll say that we have internalized misogyny. They'll say, that's because you are just a self-hating woman. That's why you don't like our stuff. And it's like, I just don't like the way you do it. I'm perfectly fine with a lot of stuff written by women, but it's like, I don't like how you do it. So it's not even just men. A lot of it is, it's just, we don't like it when these type of women are dominating everything.
Crazy irony about all this? These very cosmopolitan, liberal-leaning white women talk to a great extent about diversity, representation, inclusivity, and plurality, and yet, in the book industry, those lagging behind in representation as literary agents and in the publishing business as a whole are women of color. In their internal and industry surveys, the publishing industry laments this disproportionality and marginalization when they themselves have the agency to alter it, with, in the American publishing industry, 77% of publishing staff overall being female.
Let's back this up a little bit because I think Mike's returned.
In industry surveys, the publishing industry laments this disproportionality and marginalization when they themselves have the agency to alter it, with, in the American publishing industry, 77%.
Yeah, it's just, look at those numbers. You can't complain there's a lack of diversity when you're the one who's in charge of it. If you are the one who's in charge of it and you are so sick of how samey everything has gotten, why don't you do something about it? Because I can't imagine that these cosmopolitan women want to keep reading the same shit over and over and over and over and over again. Like, dude, don't you want to read something new? Something different? That's kind of why I got the Conan book. That's why I got Good Omens and Paradise Lost on my shelf right now that I still need to read. They're different. They're outside of everything I see. So it's like, why? Oh, sorry. I don't know why, but Outlook keeps sending me messages. But it's like, you have the power to change it. You see that there's a problem, so change it.
Of publishing staff overall being female, including 6 in 10 at executive or board level, able to implement the very changes they tie knots in their handkerchief over. Substance and quality of writing trumps theme, of course, but it's also human nature that some people are going to be more amenable and receptive to certain themes or writing styles, at least at a subtle or latent enough level to prospectively tip the scales to the slight degree that determines what is preferred and in vogue. At school level, boys aren't...
I hate that. In vogue. Oh, we're going with this because it's in vogue right now. Or we're going with this style of book because it's in vogue right now. It's in vogue. I hate that word now. I hate the word vogue now. It's not just popularity. because a lot of the stuff that's in vogue is not exactly popular. It's considered refined, or what should be popular. Like, this is the stuff that the good, intelligent people are reading. Therefore, this is what we're going to go with now. I hate it. It's so elitist. It's an elitist way of thinking. We're going with this because it's in vogue.
Shying away from these competitions entirely because their brains have been rewired for the shorter and sharper dopamine hits of playing video games. They're eschewing these competitions partly because they're lame, unreceptive to their preoccupations and interests.
I don't know. I don't want to pick on little girls, okay? As informative as this video is, I don't want to pick on little girls. They look like they're in their teens. I don't want to pick on little girls.
These competitions need more relatable male judges who can address the tonal imbalances and create...
Agreed. Because, let's be real, a lot of female judges are not going to really relate to the male authors as much. So, yeah, we need to have more diversity in judging!
A permission structure for boys to feel that it is worth their while to submit pieces that are suffused with things that actually interest them, encompassing the illicit, the vulgar, rugged individualism, the mordantly sarcastic, the visceral, the sexually and socially competitive, the lurid, and the dissident. At a half-conscious level, boys comprehend...
I've known so many guys. Well, it's like they like something that's disturbing, but it's not because they're like, oh, they're incels and they're planning something. No, they like something disturbing because it evokes a reaction out of them, and it gets them to... It triggers their fight or flight response in a way that gets them to contemplate what's going on. I think that's why more men prefer horror and stuff like that, because a lot of the stuff in horror, it's shocking and it's disturbing, it's disgusting, but it's because it is disturbing and disgusting, a guy will see it and their like problem solving brain will kick in, and then they'll dissect it, like, why is this here, why is this happening, but like, what is the significance of this? Like, I feel like guys respond more to the vulgar and the disgusting more than they of the like abstract and soft kind. A former friend of mine had recommended this book to me, Haunted. I only got to the first chapter. Oh my god, is that book disturbing. Like, that first story, I tapped out because holy fuck. But he loved it, and he got a lot of value out of it. And it's because it was so vulgar and disturbing that it got him to think about it. But, I don't know. Reading about a kid getting his intestines sucked out, not exactly happy reading material. I'm clenching my butt cheeks as I say that.
Apprehend that, in a competitively viable sense, it is prohibitive to write about the things they would actually like to write about. So why bother? Instead of posing questions like, why is there such a crisis of boys not reading? Or why are boys so lost and lacking in confidence when it comes to fiction and literature? Women in the publishing industry need to allow for the idea, as intensely counterintuitive as it is, that they may be, to at least some extent, part of the problem. For the BBC Young Writers Award, girls have won 8 times in the last decade. In the Bridport Prize Young Writer category, the latest winner was a girl whose work explores the intersectional politics of race, religion, gender, sexuality, and migration.
By the way, I know I have 2 different subjects. I will get to the second subject. It's just this one's going to take a little bit. Sorry for those watching.
2023 winner, a story about a woman who, after 7 miscarriages in 7 years of marriage, decided to remove her womb as a way to seek agency from the toxic clutches of patriarchy. And
that doesn't even make sense. Like, did she want the baby? And if so, if she wanted the baby, how is removing her womb a reclamation? I don't get it. That makes no sense. But yeah, that's something that guys don't want to read about. I don't know about you, but I know more men who are upset about the idea of like a woman losing her baby. I don't know why, but like men do get very upset about that. There's this weird misconception that guys aren't bothered by the concept of a miscarriage or like a stillbirth or something like that, but no, men get very, very disturbed, and that's actually one of the few boundaries when it comes to disturbing fiction for men. It's like, oh, oof, it make me very uncomfy. Like even men get disturbed by that, so it's like, I don't get it. So after these miscarriages, she removes her womb to fight back against patriarchy? How does that make sense? Like, was she being forcefully impregnated? In that case, I can kind of understand, but I mean, I'm thinking too much about this. Let's move on.
And the joint winners in 2022 were young women. In Canada's Alice Munro Festival short story competition, the youth prize has gone to girls for almost a decade. And in the most recent Amazon Youth Short Story competition, all 6 finalists were girls. In New Zealand, a prominent competition is the Sargison Prize. In the secondary schools division in 2020, first place went to a girl who particularly enjoys the poetry of Sappho, while second place went to a girl, she, her, and they-them pronouns, inspired to write by her experiences of LGBTQ+ identity, fantasy, and escapism, and whose writing style is influenced in part by alternative and emo song lyrics. In 2021, the winner was...
And by the way, there is nothing particularly wrong with any of that. I'm sure there is someone who will read it, but the point stands that there is a very heavy bias, that is the problem. The problem isn't the fact that she likes, she prefers clam chowder over sausage. That's fine. And her writing about her experience about that is also fine. Like, that is fine. It's just the bias is the problem.
Was a girl, with second place also going to a girl, who was inspired to write by her experiences, feelings, and identity as part of the LGBTQ+ community. The 2022 winner was a girl, with second and third place also girls. All 5 of the highly commended entries were from girls. The 2023 winner was a girl, with a story entitled The Catastrophe of Swimming, about a Nigerian girl and her Pakeha boyfriend at a swimming pool. In 2024, all 3 top places and all 6 highly commended...
I find it so funny that nowadays they still try to be like, prizes for girls, like writing groups for girls, blah, 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 for girls. And at this point, it's women who are dominating everything. So why do we even have these things anymore? It's not like as if we either disband them because they become redundant at this point. It's not like if we do that for a couple of them, then immediately women's rights are going to be reverted. Women's literature is going to be thrown out the window. Nobody's going to read anything by a woman, anything, anywhere. But at this point, it's just become so saturated. It's almost laughable how anybody could think that women are discriminated against in the publishing industry, or that we need more female voices in books or TV or comic books or anything like that, when it's so saturated now.
Works were from girls. One of the finalists wrote that most of her work is inspired by her experiences as a young queer woman. Unless you're a tediously strict social constructivist, you would largely agree that no man could realistically have written A Room of One's Own or The Handmaid's Tale. And by contrast, there are certain proclivities and preoccupations and attitudes that men can bring to literature. There has always been, up until recently, a certain breed of male writers able to capture the zeitgeist in a way that bursts out of the publishing world, whose works become cultural touchstones. Those authors are cool in the way that indie musical acts are cool, and they're largely gone now. Irvin Welsh's Trainspotting, published in 1993, is narrated by a junkie intellectual, Mark Renton, whose struggle against heroin addiction and social deprivation brings competing notions of choice and compulsion into stark relief. The book was a sensation.
For me, it's anything written by Garth Ennis. Like, look, the man, he has his hits and he has his losses. But with Garth Ennis, I have never seen any female author write like he does. The way he words things and the way he tells his stories is so different and visceral. And not many women will rise up to the challenge of making something similar to something like Garth Ennis, because his stuff is very vulgar and very mature. As much as I like the guy, it's sometimes, especially the Cross series, you look at it and you kind of want to pull him aside and be like, hey dude, are you okay? Are you going through something right now? But he also has some of the most pointed critiques of society with his works. Like Preacher especially just takes a harpoon to particularly American religious culture. I say religious culture because I don't know if he has spoken like explicitly too much about religion. I know he's an atheist, but I don't think he would agree with a lot of the tenets of religion, like, discipline, being kind to another. His criticism is more towards people who consider themselves holier than thou, and people who think that they can get away with being absolute bastards. But I don't know if a woman would be able to write in the same way as he does, or if she does make it crude, she's going to be very crude, and she's going to go so over the top with crude, she's going to miss the point, or she'll be so pointed, but she's not going to be very exciting about it. And Garth Ennis manages to hit both of those points. Hey, if you have a female author that can write like Garth Ennis, please leave a comment down below. But my point being that, like, when it comes to male authors, even something like Alan Moore or Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, or Neil Gaiman, the way that they can write is so captivating, even though sometimes it's very vulgar, it's very upsetting, but it gets the point across,
In the late 90s, there was almost nothing hipper than Fight Club, a hit among all demographics. With the publication in 2000 of A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, Dave Eggers made his entrance into the American literary landscape, helping create a literary aesthetic for a whole cadre of young American writers. Jonathan Safran Foer was the literary world's hottest star in 2005, when his novel Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close punctured through to the mainstream. The best male authors have an aptitude for exploring the territory of dystopian fiction, full of portents about technology, science, medicine, and societal breakdown, the threats of autocracy, failed ethics, and modern society's exhilarating and often destructive relationship with technology. Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go harrowingly explores medical ethics, cloning, and technology. Another mode of writing that is sorely lacking in contemporary literary culture, the male ability to combine depravity with the high literary. Martin Amos's Zone of Interest to Cormac McCarthy's The Road.
I have heard so many things about The Road. I don't know if I want to read it, because I have heard it is one of the most soul-crushing books out there. I heard it's very good, but it's also soul-crushing, and I feel like I'm going to need to reserve a week of not doing any, obviously I'm going to be going to work, but a week of not being on social media, of not, writing or anything like that, to fully read and process that thing, because from what I've heard, it will make you sit up at night and call your mom in the morning to tell her that you love her.
Encourage and publish writers who can deliver these modes of writing, these themes, these proclivities, and you'll have loads more young men wanting to read. We'll also go some way toward fixing the glaring gender imbalance in our awards, and hopefully you'll get a pendulum swing back to where everyone is ideally represented.
Yes! That is the main thing. It's not that we want women to go away. It's just we want things to be a little bit more equal. And all of this, I started here, and then 2 days ago, we got this article that's making the rounds because, oh boy, they cannot let this go. The disappearance of literary men should worry everyone. Now, you'd think a title like that would be more sympathetic to what the hell is going on with male readers. Oh, you are wrong. You are very, very wrong. I'm trying to figure out what this doodle is supposed to say. But anyways, all right. David J. Morris teaches creative writing. All right. Over the past 2 decades, literary fiction has become a largely female pursuit. Yeah. Novels are increasingly written by women and read by women. In 2004, about half the authors on the New York Times fiction bestseller list were women and about half men. This year, the list looks more than 3/4 women. According to multiple reports, women readers now account for about 80% of fiction sales. I see the same pattern in the creative writing program where I've taught for 8 years. About 60% of our applications come from women, and some cohorts in our program are entirely female. When I was a graduate student in a similar program about 20 years ago, the cohorts were split fairly evenly by gender. As Eamon Dolan, a vice president and executive editor at Simon & Schuster, told me recently, the young male novelist is a rare species. Yes, that is quite the problem. So what is your response to that? Male underrepresentation is an uncomfortable topic in a literary world otherwise highly attuned to such imbalances. In 2022, the novelist Joyce Carol Oates wrote on Twitter that a friend who is a literary agent told me that he cannot even get editors to read first novels by young white male writers, no matter how good. The public response to Miss Oates' comment was swift and cutting, not entirely without reason, as the book world does remain overwhelmingly white. But the lack of concern about the fate of male writers was striking. To be clear, I welcome the end of male dominance in literature. Men ruled the roost for far too long, too often at the expense of great women writers who ought to have been read instead. I also don't think that men deserve to be better represented in literary fiction. They don't suffer the same kind of prejudice that women have long endured. Furthermore, young men should be reading Sally Rooney and Elena Ferrand. Male readers don't need to be paired with male writers. You lost me there, buddy. Okay. Yes, men shouldn't just read male authors. Yes, men should expand their reading diet. Yes, men have largely ruled the roost for a long time. Yes, women have had a hard time in the past getting in. However, just because there are more women now, that doesn't mean it's a good thing, and it's not a good thing to celebrate men being kicked out of the publishing industry. We shouldn't be celebrating a gender disparity at all. We should be looking at the problem like, oh, wow, why are men not coming to read anymore? That is a problem. Why don't we solve that? And instead, you're like, well, why aren't you reading more women books? That's such a cucked response. But if you care about the health of our society, especially in the age of Donald Trump and the distorted conceptions of masculinity he helps to foster, the decline and fall of literary men should worry you. Yes! Men need to read. I would be very disturbed if a plumber came to fix a major plumbing issue and I found out that he was illiterate. That would be very disturbing. In recent decades, young men have regressed educationally, emotionally, and culturally. Among women matriculating at four-year public colleges, about half will graduate 4 years later. For men, the rate is under 40%. This disparity surely translates a drop-off in the number of of novels young men read, as they descend deeper into video games and pornography. Young men who still exhibit curiosity about the world too often seek intellectual stimulation through figures in the manosphere, such as Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan. Do not lump Joe in with Andrew Tate, okay? But secondly, that is a whole lot of yada-yadaing he did in that one paragraph. Like, oh yeah, men are not graduating as much. They're not being educated enough. That is a serious problem. I mean, either there is something going on in the universities that is failing men, or the men are not finding universities worth it anymore, and therefore our response should be, let's figure out why. Why don't the men want to go to universities? Why don't the men want to contribute to the educational system? Why? That should be the question. But no, yada, yada, yada. They don't want to learn. Yada, yada, yada. That is such a stupid and regressive argument to make. It is a serious problem that men don't want to learn anymore. Like, why don't you want to find out why men don't want to read? Why don't you want to figure that out? I don't understand why you are putting your head in the sand so stubbornly. And by the way, Joe Rogan's podcast, you say what you want about him. He has brought on some very interesting guests, and they have interesting conversations. That's why young men listen to him. And Andrew Tate, look, I don't like the guy. I do not like Andrew Tate at all. However, he does provide a far more positive message about masculinity than you fucks ever did. Alright, the marginalization of young men seems to have been a significant factor in this year's presidential election. No voters are more committed to Mr. Trump than young white men, and he also did well with Hispanic men, and continued to make great gains with black men. I think 2024 as the Fight Club election, in which disaffected guys vented their frustrations and anxieties through a brawler who will one day reveal himself to be not their hero, but rather a figment of their imagination. This isn't even about why are men not reading. This is about, I don't like Trump, and I am mad that men want Trump and they don't want to lick Kamala Harris's clit. I know that's crass. I know that's crude. But that's what this is. This isn't even... You're not even talking about the shit that you set up to talk about. You just want to bitch about Trump, and you want to bitch about the fact that young men don't view the world the same way you do. Go back to the original topic. Why are men not reading? Alright, these young men need better stories. They need to see themselves as belonging in the world of storytelling. Yes. And how do you you suggest we fix that? Novels do many things. They entertain, inspire, puzzle, hypnotize. But reading fiction is also an excellent way to improve one's emotional IQ. Novels help us form our identities and understand our lives. Like many other bookish Gen Xers, I can't conceive of my formative years without the Douglas Copeland novel that gave our generation its name. This is why we need a more inclusive literary culture. Oh my! One that will bring young men in from the cold. And how do you suggest we do that? I'm not saying we should declare progress for women writers complete and now focus only on men. Nobody said that. Like the last two videos we watched, neither of them said that we need to go back to women dominating everything. They said we should equal it out. That is the answer. Like, why are you guys so afraid of letting men in? Why are you so afraid of men expressing themselves? You bitch and moan that men don't express themselves enough or they don't open themselves enough. So why are you so afraid to let them express themselves so openly, no matter how disturbing or yucky it may be? In fact, I would say it is better for men to express themselves through writing or music, all those ugly feelings, to express it that way than picking up an AR-15 and shooting up a school. Like, perfect example. There's this comic book that you may have heard of called The Crow. And that was a book by James O'Barr. And the big push for him to make that book was many years ago, he lost his fiance in a very tragic accident, and it destroyed him. He had a hard life before her, but that event, it destroyed him completely. And The Crow was basically his art therapy to help him get through that dark time. And it resonated with so many other men and so many other people, not just men. But it's violent. I will give you that. It's dealing with a lot of ugly emotions that men can have, but it is also one of the most beautiful pieces of emotional art that I think you can ever find. So, and I feel like a man expressing his deepest emotions that way, not only can it be good for him, but it can also be beautiful for the rest of us to witness. And that can't happen if you tell men to shut up and let women speak. Like, don't get me wrong, women can make beautiful art too. Women can make beautiful emotional art, even when women are describing their ugliest parts of themselves and they're going deep into their ugliest emotions. I feel like it could be some of the most beautiful stuff ever. But why can't men do the same anymore? You were fine with it in the past. In fact, some of the best stories in the past were men talking about their ugliest emotions. So that is how you're going to get like the seminal authors, like more male authors that'll speak to young men, because guess what? Young men are dealing with a lot of ugly emotions these days, and they can use an author to be like, hey, I know how it feels. I know where you are right now. Here, listen to my tale. Let me inspire you. I want more men to be inspired. I want more men and women to be inspired. But men, particularly nowadays, need to be inspired. I don't care if men ruled the roost for so long. I don't think we should. I thought it was a terrible idea in the first place to completely shut out men from this. From comic books, from movies, from writing, to all other types of entertainment, trying to push them out to push a more female entertainment. I feel like that was a big mistake. All right. I'm not saying that we should declare progress for women writers completely. All right, we already got that. And indeed, what will become of literature is if men are no longer involved in reading or writing. The fortunes of men and women are intertwined. This is why, for example, I make sure that my male students read A Handmaid's Tale. It's not just their edification that matters. Women also benefit from the existence of better men. So basically, your answer is pussify men. That is your answer. Pussify men. Hey, David, have you ever thought that men don't want to be pussified? In fact, men really, really, really don't like it when you try to pussify them. In fact, what was the main theme of Fight Club? You know, that book you name-dropped earlier? What was the main theme of that? Men who were frustrated and ended up committing acts of violence because of their frustration and feeling emasculated. Men don't want to be pussified. They just want someone to reach out and say, hey, join the table. I want to hear your full and honest thoughts. Join the table. Men don't want to be told, shut the fuck up and listen to the women. They want to be told, hey, we want to hear your opinion too. We want to hear everyone's opinion. Men, women, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. That's what men want to hear. And your response is cut your dick off. Basically, that's your response. Cut your dick off, listen to the women, stop being those mean, masculine men who like to go to the gym and want to take care of their bodies and want to be fathers and husbands. No, listen to the women. This is why you lost men. This is why you lost men. This is why men don't want to take your creative writing class. I'm not saying that men don't want to read anything by women. Again, Frankenstein is, like Mary Shelley, she's the godmother of science fiction. And there are men who will go back to Frankenstein because it is the defining work for the genre. But it's like men also men want to read a variety of books, not just from women. And when you just shove all women in their face, they're going to get disheartened. They're disheartened because of people like you, David. All right, last paragraph. Here I am reminded of something that the feminist scholar Bell Hooks wrote. Wait, Bell Hooks? The Bell Hooks? The Bell Hooks who says that any type of sex is rape? That Bell Hooks? There remains a small strain of feminist thinkers who feel strongly that they have given all they want to give to men. They are concerned solely with improving the collective welfare of women. Yet life has shown me that any time a single man dares to transgress patriarchal boundaries, something I am convinced that literature enables men to do. Oh, shut the fuck up! The lives of women, men, and children are fundamentally changed for the better. David. You don't give a shit about men. You're just mad because the orange man is in charge now. That is the entire point of this whole article. You do not give a single fuck about men. You don't care that men aren't getting into the literary world. You don't care that men are giving up on college. You just care that not all men think the same way you do and aren't marching up in line to eat the pussy of whatever the fuck the publishing industry has become. Fuck you. I've gotten really, really angry. So now, let's get to the second topic of tonight because, oh my god, I almost spent 2 hours on this. Gotta spend a little bit longer on this stream tonight. I'm making up for lost time because the last few weeks I have been a bit under the weather. Alright, so let's go from one infuriating topic to a different infuriating topic. And if you've seen the title of the stream, you probably know what that is. Give me a second to find it. All right, so if you have been in the comics sphere, you will have heard about Comicsgate. And Comicsgate initially started out as a consumer revolt against the mainstream comic book industry.
You ever thought about what would be the most...
No, we are not going to watch this entire video. Do not panic. I'm just bringing this video up because this is the Mikey No More. I watched this documentary fully, and he does a very good job explaining what Comicsgate is and explaining all the drama that happened and why it has gone downhill. I also did an article about Comicsgate, and that was like a year ago, and it has already become completely outdated with just how much Comicsgate has fallen. And I admittedly, I wasn't completely aware of all of the drama that was going on. I knew that certain figures were stirring up shit where they shouldn't, and it has been causing some tensions. But I didn't want to really lay the blame at anyone's feet too much. Oh my god, Outlook, stop it. Go away. I don't care about Sam's Club right now. But I wasn't completely aware of just how bad it was getting until about 6 months ago. So, for context, let's set up a little bit of context here. So Comicsgate is very similar to Gamergate in that it was a consumer revolt against the comic book industry because the comic book industry was starting to be infested with the uber cosmopolitan feminist types that I have been lampooning for the last 2 hours. But with Comicsgate, it kind of turned from a consumer revolt to a brand to a label to whatever the hell it is now. And one thing I will say about Mikey No More, he talks about your boy Zach, who is a very prominent figure. And look, I'm not saying this because I'm I'm not saying this because I'm gay for Zach, okay? I'm saying this because I think what Mikey's been a little too unfair because he kind of blames Zach for Comicsgate going downhill in the first place simply by making Jawbreakers Lost Souls and publishing it. I disagree that that's a bad thing because detractors will say, Mikey says that detractors say that, hey, this was consumer revolt and you're trying to turn it into a brand. I didn't really see that as much as turning Comicsgate into a brand. I don't think Zach ever intended to turn Comicsgate into his own brand or become the king of Comicsgate. He never wanted that. I think it was more of along the lines of he's been bitching about all of these modern comics. And eventually the conversation comes up of, oh yeah, well, if you don't like it, you think you can do better, why don't you write your own comic book? And Zach was just like, bet! And then he wrote Jawbreakers Lost Souls. I think that's just a natural consequence of a consumer revolt. People are eventually just going to make their own shit, which I think is completely fucking fine. You can argue that Comicsgate jumping on that and deciding, hey, let's just use Comicsgate as like pushing our brand. I guess I can see that, but it's like I think laying that on the feet of Zach, who has no interest of getting involved with comics again, especially now. I don't think he would want to get involved with it. I think that's a bit unfair, and Mikey is a little unfair with Zach for the majority of this video, right up until it gets to his latest drama that's been going over this last year, where Zach has been going after the birthday clowns because of Furiosa failing, which it's like, Zach, hello, buddy, what are you doing? Dude, stop! It's like, I mean, I get him not wanting to get into the drama with like seeing movies fail, and I get him being frustrated with hate watchers, and he's not the only one that gets frustrated with hate watchers. And even Clownfish TV, Neon, and Geeky, they have pointed out, look, don't hate watch, because if you hate watch, they're still just going to count your watch as a watch, and they're going to think it's a good thing, and they're going to make more of the stuff you hate. So I get that point. And I also get that point that Zach's making of, why are you focusing so much on the gay shit now? Why don't you just focus on the good shit? And it's like, I get it, but dude, your entire career was built on tearing apart these SJW comic books that you yourself have admitted are not for you. And B, okay, dude, all you have to say is make like one post. Just make one post and say, I am not interested in watching shit I don't want to watch, so I'm not gonna. Don't ask me to review this show. Don't ask me to even get involved in the drama. I don't want any part of it. I just want to focus on the good shit that I like. That is all he had to do, not making multiple posts, going after multiple YouTubers. He's basically pulling gay ops. He's pulling gay ops on everybody, and it's like, dude, just stop. Stop. Walk away from the computer. Go outside. Spend some time with your kids. Just stop. By the way, Zach, I'm still waiting on those books. I know I'm in wave 6. I messaged him about it. I'm on wave 6, and he's on wave 5 right now of fulfillment. So I should be getting my book soon, but still, dude, I'm waiting. I love you, dude, but you need to stop. But your boy Zach was not the main character of this particular documentary or the Comicsgate drama that's going on now. The main character is a man that you have heard of before. His name is Ethan Van Sciver, he is admittedly a very talented artist. He used to illustrate for Green Lantern. He is a talented artist. He is good at what he does. The problem is, he's a drama queen. That's the best way to describe Ethan. He is a complete mean girl drama queen who, after being let go from DC for being a conservative, and I say that in heavy quotes, though with his recent actions, I am starting to wonder if there is a different side of that story. Anyways, he has basically used Comicsgate. He first off, he basically declared himself as the king of Comicsgate, and he has used his position to not only gatekeep Comicsgate, but also to browbeat and bully people into believing what he believes, saying what he says, and has even gotten people canceled. Yes, he has led cancellation campaigns against other creators for not walking in lockstep with him. Most notably, Tim Lim from Iconic Comics, just because Tim Lim called him out on his shit. And look, I'm guessing Tim Lim was just doing what any bloke would do when he saw someone he respected and wanted to see him, do better, or, hold him accountable so he can learn and grow from experience. I'm sure that's what Tim Lim was doing. I can't really read his mind or anything. Ethan took that as a betrayal and decided to try and just be a thorn in Tim Lim's side. And he does this for every iconic comic creator, and even Doug Ernst. I sometimes talk to Doug Ernst in DMs. We're not buddies. It's just every so often we'll have a little exchange, and that is what it is. We're acquaintances. I wouldn't call us friends just because I've never met the guy, but we are acquaintances at the very least. And Doug has said multiple times that Ethan has just been going off of old rumors and just spreading so many lies and rumors to try and destroy not only his career, but anyone who catches Ethan Van Sciver's ire. And that is the most petty high school girl shit I have ever heard of. It's like, dude, you're 50. Why are you acting like this? And by the way, Ethan, where is it? Through the window, by the window. I'm still waiting for my book, Ethan. I tried to request a refund, but you won't let me. I'm still waiting. It's been, oh God, how many years has it been? Like, yeah, your boy Zach is bad, but Ethan! It's been years! And it's because of this. It's because of this that Comicsgate has fallen off. And it's also because of this that people don't trust Indiegogo comics anymore. It's because of this. And, a little bit of your boy Zach. Because, Zach, I know you're in your Lady Gaga era. But no, late books are not a good thing. Stop trying to tell yourself that they are a good thing. But this shit is why indie comics are starting to get a bad name. And it's why people don't trust it anymore. And it's sad because I've been talking to RJ and John from John's Longbox, and they too are having some difficulties with, they had some difficulties. They still produce their books, and they are still good books, but they're still having some difficulty getting people to trust them because unless you're a big name like Mike Barron or you're in the Rippaverse, people don't trust campaigns as much as they used to back in even 2020. And it's because of people like Ethan Van Sciver, who is the biggest name in Comicsgate, and it's because of that Comicsgate has gone down the shitter. I don't really know where else to take this rant, because I will say I still believe in the initial tenets of Comicsgate. Let me take a drink here. Drinking some more snake oil tonight because it's Monday and the problems of yesterday still apply to today, but they don't matter now because I got my beer and the day is almost over and I can almost go to bed. Anyway, but I still believe in the main tenets of Comicsgate, where the mainstream comic book industry has lost its way. They are trying to get their way back with Absolute Batman. I have heard Absolute Batman is good, but I'm just confused of why it exists in the first place. For me, it looks like DC attempting to do the ultimates. Striking the iron when it's ice cold. Like, okay. I guess there are worse ways to get readers. But yeah, the comic industry has lost its way, and I still, honest to God, believe that it's going to take a big collapse and a big upset in the mainstream industry for things to finally go back to normal, because it's been so infested by bad actors who aren't so much interested in making good comic books, but they're interested in pushing their own message and their own narrative. I still believe that. I still see it. And the comic pros who are still in the movement, they got their nails bedded into the skin of comic books. The dry, leathery, pale skin of comic books, and they are not letting go. And I also believe, nowadays people are calling it the Iron Age movement, where indie comic creators are just going off on doing their own thing. And I still do believe that at this point, people need to strike out on their own if we want to keep making good entertainment. Because honestly, I'm seeing way better stuff from indies than I am from the industry. Like, yeah, Kneel Before Doomface. Yeah, like, this shit looks pretty good. Like, look at that. This is all indie. If somebody 20 years ago, somebody told you, hey, I'm backing an independent comic, this is not what you would be imagining. You would be imagining some crappy book from nowhere, Minnesota, about a dude who's making a furniture store, and he has these weird powers that can turn light into constructs, and he runs away when a woman is being raped, and there's a side plot of this other character of an actress who was raped on stage in front of thousands of people, and people didn't realize she was being raped. If you got that reference, cookies for you. But it's like, this is what indies are coming out with now. And you don't really see the crap like this in mainstream anymore. And so that's why I am so sad and disheartened that Comicsgate has become what it was. I mean, yeah, you can argue from the start it was gay and cringe. But, it was the start of something that could have been good. And it was good for a little bit. And we got some good stuff out of it. We got iconic comics out of it. We got... Look, still, as much as I want to say about your boy Zach, we got him out of it. And there have been some good stuff that came out of it. I'm just so heartbroken that it turned out this way. Oof. Burp. Burp. Burp, burp, burp. All right, I guess that's enough ranting from me. What else am I talking about tonight? Well, I guess while we're here, Indiegogo is still holding on to my funds. But apparently my campaign is still going to be open, and I'm going to keep it open because I want to, let's see. Yeah, okay, so the story behind it is, I know it says now that I didn't reach my goal, but the story behind it is, we got to the 1937, and I figured to myself, okay, it's only a few days till the campaign ends. I don't know if I'm going to get another sale, but just in case, I'll throw in another $100 to, make sure to tip it off to get my full amount. And they said I can't do that. I don't know why it's such a bad thing for a creator to contribute to a campaign, because it's not even that I want to tip the numbers. It was just $100. I swear it really was just $100. I'm not going to go into the perks report thing or anything, because I don't want to dox anybody else who contributed, but it really was just $100, and they threw a hissy about it and said no. So they're still investigating that. I did get my aunt to help me pitch in to get some money, and I got another donation on top of that. But still waiting on the funds. I don't know what the hell they're doing, and that situation with Tim Lim, with Common America and him not getting his funds, it makes me worried. It makes me very worried. Especially, I didn't even know that was a rule, that you couldn't contribute to your own campaign. I didn't know that was a rule. But apparently now it's a rule. I didn't know that. I genuinely did not know that. So, I don't know if that's them coming up with reasons to not give me my money. I hope that's not it. I'm probably just theorizing because of the whole Tim Lim situation. But there were some digital backers, and they did get the, They did get the digital copy of my comic book. And if you got it and you read it, hey, let me know what you thought about it. But one way or another, I'm going to get the money. One way or another, my comic book is going to be coming out. It's only been a week since all this started. So let's see what happens. Well, not even a week, I guess, but we'll get there. We'll get there. All right, I have been just riling myself up this stream. Not super happy. I'm sorry, guys. I'll try to think of a more positive topic to talk about next week, because there is a lot of positive going on. All right, so I am going to just end the stream there. I hope you guys enjoyed my insane rant, and y'all have a good night. Bye.